I think I'm gonna have one of those organic smoothies. Which kind would you recommend? What? I can't hear you. I can't hear you. Do you speak words? I can't hear you.
So to begin, we're going to talk about the anatomy of the ear. The human ear is divided into three basic parts: the inner, the middle, and the outer section of the ear. We're going to hit each one individually. So the outer ear is the simplest portion to understand. The outer ear is essentially the external portion right there that you can see on the outsides of your head. Its primary purpose is to pick up the sound waves, incoming sound waves, and let them enter into your brain so that they can be further interpreted. Outer ear. Second portion to the anatomy of the ear is the middle ear. Middle ear consists of basically the eardrum and the three auditory bones. The eardrum is essentially at the end of the ear canal. Incoming sound waves hit this eardrum, also known as tympanic membrane, vibrates it. And what this does is when this eardrum vibrates, it takes these three auditory bones, makes them tap. You have malleus, incus, and the stapes. The final part to the anatomy of the ear is the inner ear. The inner ear consists of the cochlea. This is your cochlea. It's basically a semicircular canal filled with fluid. When sounds enter your ear, vibrate your eardrum, cause your three auditory bones to tap. That mechanical tapping is transferred into the fluid of the semicircular canal. This tapping creates waves in the fluid going in through the cochlea. The way that the sound then can get to your brain by specialized hair cells that can detect the movement and then transfer it into an electrical impulse that goes through the nerve and then up to your brain. The final way that these sounds get transferred to your brain is at the auditory nerve. So before we can understand why communication is so important in the world of the hearing impaired, we need to understand, why does hearing loss happen? Hearing loss primarily happens for three different reasons. First kind of hearing loss is called conductive hearing loss. Conductive hearing loss basically happens when there's damage to the eardrum or the auditory bones. Another way to look at it is mechanical damage. Some examples of conductive hearing loss are perforated eardrums, ear infection, or fluid built up from colds. The second form of hearing loss is sensorineural. Sensorineural is the most common form of hearing loss. It is classified by a disorder of the inner ear. Bad thing about sensorineural hearing loss is it can't be surgically corrected. If you have sensorineural problems, you're probably stuck with them. Some examples that cause sensorineural loss: genetic disorders, malformation of the inner ear, reaction to drugs, or aging. Final form of hearing loss is mixed. Hearing loss can be hard to classify. Mixed is basically an excuse for everything else that isn't either under the category of conductive or sensorineural. It's basically a big excuse for doctors.
I'm going to talk about the three types of communication that deaf people mostly use. The first one is speech reading, also known as lip reading. 70% of speech cannot be visibly interpreted. For example, if I were to be walking up and mouth olive oil, what does that look like? Yeah, it looks like I love you. The second is sign language. Sign language has a lot of nonverbal implications. For example, widen your eyebrows or widen your eyes when you're asking a question. The third is talking. A misinterpretation is that deaf people cannot talk. Sometimes they don't like to talk, they would rather use like sign language. They don't like the way they sound. For example, if I were to put these headphones on and blast the music really loud, you can see I'm just talking normal, but I don't know what I'm saying. We've come a long ways in developing new ways for deaf people to regain their hearing. One of these new breakthrough technologies is the cochlear implant. There are 4 major parts to the cochlear implant. This revolutionary device allows deaf people to hear for their first time using the cochlear implant.
I was reading this article, right, and I came across some facts. Only 3 out of every 1,000 people are deaf in the United States. What does that mean? It's just a statistic. I kept on reading the article, right? Most times, most people don't know how to respond to things that are out of the norm. When things are out of the norm, people get out of their comfort zone, and they don't like it. Neither do I. Do you know that most people automatically associate deaf people with being handicapped? That ain't right. I was also told that reading lips is hard for deaf people, especially when you curl them like I do. So when you're talking to a deaf person, don't curl your lips. Deaf people don't like to be babied or treated like less of a person, so don't do it, cause it's mean. So what have we learned today, class? 3 out of every 1,000 people in the US are functionally deaf. Number 2, most people don't know how to respond to things that are not normal. 3, deaf people are handicapped. Not true. Number 4, reading lips is hard, even for deaf people. And finally, number 5, deaf people are not different, so don't treat them different. They don't like it.
People need a job. Those people can be deaf. So, how does a deaf person get a job? According to the National Health Survey, within the past 6 years, 6 million people have been known to be deaf. Now, the 3 most known challenges for deaf employees and non-deaf employees are the following: reduced job safety, inability to hear warning signals, interference with on-the-job communication. So, how should an employer keep their offices clean and wonderful for their deaf employees? Remove glass barriers, because they muffle sound. Remove all background noise. Finally, the best way to supply wonderful technology for your deaf employee is the telephone typewriter. What you have is you have the phone, and then we have the keys, and then one more layer here, and then we have the bottom part. So as you can see, it looks kind of like a hamburger. So there you have it. If you would like more information, I suggest you find a deaf person, ask them, what do you do if you want to work?